So, before we begin today, I've been noticing that more and more people are listening to the EdTech Startup Show, and I just want to say thank you. And if you do like the show, it means you might be interested in the intersection of business, technology, and education. Then I want to encourage you to also check out the Business of Learning letter, which is my once a week newsletter on a lot of the same stuff that we discuss on the podcast, but it's shorter, it's a little bit more action packed and less stories and reflections, and it comes once a week. So if you want to hear news from the edtech industry, you want to hear my marketing and copywriting tips, and you want to hear about any other special offers or things I'm sharing, you can go to gerarddawson.com and drop your email right in the form there to get the free welcome series. And if you like it, please hit reply and introduce yourself. Now, on to the show. You're listening to the EdTech Startup Show, and I'm your host, Gerard Dawson. Tonight, I'm happy to have on the line Andy Rahden, who is the CEO of Shmoop. And Andy, first, just want to welcome you onto the show.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
And just before we jump into things, my pronunciation of the company name just recently changed. I was listening to an interview you did recently from I think an Arizona-based show, and you explained a little bit about the name behind the company. So I'm wondering, just to kick things off, can you talk about the pronunciation and the meaning, and then maybe go into a little bit about what you do at Shmoop?
Absolutely happy to do it. Yeah, so Shmoop is the right way to pronounce the company. However, so many people over the years have called it Shmoop, which is probably the more standard way that we're known by, and we're fine with either one. But the roots of the origin of the name Shmoop really comes from it's a Yiddish term that means progress, and hence the pronunciation of Shmoop. So yeah, the concept of what we're trying to do holistically is really what the name of the company is, which is Shmoop, is to gain progress for our learners, our teachers, and our schools globally. So yeah, that's what it means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of jumped into things because I thought as soon as I said the name, I wanted to kind of get your take on that. But I want to just do a list for listeners of some of your past experiences, because it'll hopefully set some context for our conversation. So, right now you're the CEO at Shmoop. Previously, you have a background as general manager and vice president at Pluralsight, which is an online education company for software developers, IT, admin, creative professionals. And you've also worked as a global leader at Autodesk. And then earlier in your career, you have a background as a mechanical engineer. So I'm hoping to touch on that variety of skills and experiences you have in our time. To start though, you're the CEO of Shmoop, and you came in relatively recently to an already kind of, the company was already established. So I'm wondering, as CEO, what's your focus? What's your role there, and what's your expertise? Maybe how would you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It definitely goes in line with what the company does, what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, and really who we are as a business, mixed with who I am. So, you got all the background exactly right. Shmoop, we're an online education provider, and we provide tools that focused on test readiness for AP, ACT, SAT exams, study guides, which can help students progress forward with books that they might be studying and reading in school. We have a variety of study tools that help students progress on certain subjects or topics: math, sciences, reading, history, all the variety of tools, specifically in the 6 through 12 grade levels. And then we have a variety of courses and teaching tools. So we do have courses that focused on, standardized testing, all the way through providing teachers help with how to teach in person mixed with how to teach online, which is a very, readily needed topic in today's day and age. So we provide courses to virtual schools that actually teach students completely remote, but we also provide a series of courses for brick and mortar schools, in-person learning. So we've already done both pre-coronavirus, and post-coronavirus, we plan on doing the same thing. But really our ability to reach a bigger audience has increased. We also provide career readiness and life skills. So me coming into the picture, we've been doing that for the past decade. And the company, originally founded by a couple brilliant people, Dave and Ellen Siminoff, were the founders of the company. Ellen was previously one of the founders of Yahoo. Dave, CEO of a variety of different companies and also a large portfolio manager. Brilliant people, Stanford, Princeton graduates that really were passionate about education and started creating their first study guides, about 10 years ago. And as things progressed forward, the business started to move from just being catered to students to being utilized inside the classroom. And as they were being used in the classroom, a variety of new functions were added to our product to help teachers be more effective in the classroom, use our courses more effectively. And we continue to develop our now more than 10,000 learning videos that help students on specific topics, to help them understand sciences, to help them understand math, to help them understand the complexities of a very complex novel that can be digested, and also cause our learners, our students, to be much more engaged in what they're learning due to the humor that we put in all of that content. So historically, I think we were always looked at as a publishing company, a digital publishing company. However, as we've progressed our business forward, we've really provided a platform and a set of tools that can be used in the classroom in addition to the brilliant content that we've brought to the table. So over the past year, since I've been involved with the company, online education technology wasn't something that I was born doing. It wasn't something that I just all of a sudden, learned how to do. It was something that really I was prepped for over time. As you mentioned before, I got my mechanical engineering degree, and in getting that degree is very different than the path or where I'm at right now. And so I can go into that in just a little bit, but the concept of where we're at, moving from Autodesk, we had a series of customers that really needed to receive education, and the only way to disperse that education at the time seemed the most logical way was to put it online. And so as I progressed my career, I found myself starting up a business unit at Pluralsight that was focused on the creative design and engineering portion of the industry. And Pluralsight previously had already been involved in IT type training and development type training. And so we added those portions of the library, which now make up over half of their business from a video perspective on Pluralsight's platform. And so as I learned the education technology industry, we went through an IPO at Pluralsight, and I was introduced to Dave and Ellen Siminoff and what they were doing at Shmoop. And the concept of myself taking the helm at Shmoop was really an exciting venture for both them and for me in really changing the dynamic and starting to bring to the education tech space more of a professional development thought perspective. So if you look in the industry today, there's companies like Pluralsight that are creating this groundbreaking technology to put in place for professionals, but that necessarily hasn't always happened within the EdTech arena. For a variety of reasons. And I think there's challenges or kind of lack of innovation that has taken place inside of the K through 12 EdTech space, if you will. Like there's really been a lack of development of technology. And so we as a company, as an organization, have really thought strategically about what value points we're bringing into the picture. So over the past year, we've been interviewing thousands of our customers, and we're taking input from those customers and developing tools that will help the industry progress. And so we'll talk about it in just a little bit, but we filed our first patents for innovation here at Shmoop in the last few months, and we're really excited about driving and progressing forward the business and the industry, in being a tool and a technology that teachers can use in the classroom, whether that classroom be remote or whether that classroom be in person. The needs of the teachers are increasing, and the demand of a teacher's job will continue to increase. It's only going to get more complicated as we progress post coronavirus. And the things that we are developing, it's really been amazing to think, about how needed the technology that we're creating and have been creating for the past year, how applicable that will be in the market. So yeah, that's kind of how I found my way up to Shmoop, and that's a little bit more about what Shmoop does and how those things kind of came together. So hopefully that gets to the point of what I was trying, what you were looking for.
Yeah, it does. And so you mentioned moving from Pluralsight to Shmoop and drawing this comparison where at Pluralsight there was, based on what the company does, but also just the industry in general, an emphasis on professional development, and in this case it being delivered online. And then at moving to Shmoop, you notice maybe that's not so much the case in K-12, where there's certainly room for innovation there. I'm wondering, as somebody who's worked in the private sector industries that are not part of K-12, what other differences or what things struck you as you made a shift to your role at Shmoop, as you began to be immersed in the K-12 environment?
Yeah, when you think about progress holistically and thinking about someone's ability to gain knowledge and then take that knowledge and take action to generate progress, the ability to transfer knowledge is an age-old science that continues to be perfected. Our teachers in the education arena are one piece of educating individuals. I went to public school, I received an education in public school, and then I continued on to university. I received more knowledge to prepare me for what I needed to do, but then I actually went into a job, and in my first job, the skill sets that I needed, I had a good foundational knowledge base that was needed in order to build on that, so that I could progress, into a career. But not everybody receives an equal foundation, right? And when you think about, as I moved into the education arena, some of the disappointing things have been in seeing not everybody have equalized access to education, meaning some states or some districts are only able to provide what they could afford. And not every district in our country is providing the same level of education. I mean, in certain situations, that there's a drastic difference between where you live and what kind of education you receive. And the difference of that is literally cost, right? And so from a professional sector, money isn't as much of a factor in certain cases. If you work for a big corporation, those corporations could afford to buy amazing learning tools for their employees to help them progress. Like from Pluralsight, they can buy amazing tools and technology that allows their employees to receive progress in maybe their education on C++. And they can become a better developer than they were previously. In the education arena, the students in the school system are often unaware of how money's being spent to provide their additional progress, right? And so the money's either going to go into books, some of it goes to teachers, probably not enough of it, right? which we all know. And there's different tools and people that are needed to make that progress. One of the opportunities for us as I look from professional to the education arena is, one, just scaling, the ability to scale from online EdTech providers has definitely occurred. There's a lot of EdTech companies out there that are providing tools for K through 12, but the tools have focused primarily on, maybe the current way that things are being done. So rather than having a in-person or a physical book, maybe we'll go take all those books and transfer that into digital, and then we'll go sell those digital books. And that's what a lot of EdTech providers are providing, is just a different or digital form of how people digest information. And that's not at all what we're thinking about, is not just providing more of the same in a digital format. What we're talking about, and you start thinking about providing, professional level education, is using things like artificial intelligence, machine learning to drive information or to assess a student's needs to provide progress. And the way that we've thought about it wasn't, from our earliest roots of the company, wasn't to use the same methodology of here's a book, read it, here's a bunch of information, read it. We wanted to use a form of engagement. So from our foundation, we realized that, the way that you could maybe engage a student was by providing a little bit of humor and flair into some of the content, even when you're learning E equals MC squared. Like the way that you teach that concept, or if you're teaching something like convection, conduction to a student, it doesn't have to be dry. But that's historically how things have been communicated, is in a very dry way. It can be engaging. It can happen much faster. Rather than watching, an hour-long boring video about convection and conduction, maybe we can teach you those same principles in 3 to 5 minutes and actually communicate them so they stick longer, because we're using that catalyst of humor. Now, in addition to that, we also think about, well, when we assess, a student's needs, there's a lot of amazing information out there and a lot of amazing research that has been completed to help, education providers progress their students faster. The challenge, though, is it makes it, without technology, you can't really scale that across multiple students. And this is where the magic starts coming into play, and some of the things that I saw at Pluralsight. When you mix all of that research and analysis and how you can help students to progress, it does require that you collect information from students and that you're able to prescribe a direction forward in an automated way, if possible, with the teacher. So once again, we realize what technology has done for us in the world, as far as, all the apps that we use every day and all the different functionalities that we use to make our life easier, right? I mean, it's so much easier to get from point A to point B than when I was growing up as a kid. The old way was, you got to pull the map out and you have to read the map, and then you have to follow the path. Imagine if imagine if the only thing Google did was take that map and they make it digital, but they don't actually allow you to get directions in an automated way. It would be really hard on your phone to kind of move the map around. But what they've done is they've automated the ability to type in one address and another address to get from point A to point B, and it tell you how to get there. That's how we think about education, is how can we truly help the teacher along that journey and progress them to get to point A or get to point B from point A in the fastest possible way, and really be a value add tool to teachers, principals, to curriculum providers, and people who are focused on educating kids in the best possible way. And that does require, from our perspective, the need for technology. And I think that's just been highlighted through this coronavirus, situation that we're all facing now. But it's taken some time for the education industry to realize the need to adopt, technology in the classroom. And that's some of the reason why, and some of the differences I see between, private sector and education.
Yeah, I love that analogy, how too much of EdTech is like a large PDF map, and EdTech needs to be a little bit more like Google Maps, really connecting the dots. That's a great analogy to illustrate the need for innovation. So you mentioned earlier how you noticed basically inequality or a lack of equity across schools and districts between states. And the way I hear you discuss it is with through the lens of, funding and innovation can help to address that issue. And so that to me points to your backgrounds in engineering and design. And so I'm wondering how those two skill sets, kind of analytically breaking things down and then also design thinking, approaching things in an iterative process-based way. As a leader, how do those inform your work?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I wouldn't have realized the value when I was a student in school, I'd see it now. When you receive, an engineering degree, you can't be taught everything that there is to learn about mechanical engineering. You go through thermodynamics classes, you go through aerospace engineering courses, you go through partial differential equations and thermodynamics. And as you're taking all of these classes, they're very advanced in teaching you how to, how heat transfers through a substance, how mechanical components move, how stresses impact the movement of mechanical components. And what you're really doing when you look at it at the most simplistic level is you're being presented with problems and you're being asked to solve those problems. And that's what engineering is to me, is there is a lot of knowledge that is needed to solve problems in the world of engineering. But you're really taught the system and the process of how to solve problems, right? Like how to gain a hypothesis and how to start addressing the hypothesis through action and how to do it in a safe way. So the concept of all of these things coming into play as a CEO of a company becomes really important. There's a lot of moving parts in an organization. There's finances of a company. There's your ability to go to market, your ability to position and explain what your product does to your customer. There's the ability to do that digitally, for someone to come to your website and understand what kind of product or tools you have and how they can be helpful. That's a real big challenge, because that starts fitting into the marketing aspects of what companies do. And as important as it is to make money, it's also really important to communicate what you're doing to your customers so that they understand the value that it has to how it can help them. If they don't understand the value, they can't take advantage of the help. So yeah, I think from a product development perspective, it's very obvious in the fact that we have customer challenges. Our customers have real problems in the classroom that they have to deal with. And our job is to help them solve those problems, and for us to maybe solve some of those problems on our own and provide solutions to those problems and challenges. So yeah, it's been very applicable to have that engineering type background. I think, I'm a very analytical thinker. Data is extremely important for us to run the business. And so I'm grateful for that background in helping us progress forward.
So shifting gears a little bit, I want to ask about starting at a new company, and two questions really. One, I want to ask if you can remember your, basically day one at Shmoop, and if you could describe that as much as you would be willing to. And then to extrapolate, I'm wondering if you could give suggestions for people who might be in a similar situation, perhaps at a different scale. So somebody who's joining an already established company and is looking to assess the situation, build rapport, give input and show your expertise, but not be imposing. So I'm wondering if you can kind of give the micro and the macro to your beginning at Shmoop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've made that transition twice in my career in a big way. So I can use both of them. One was the transition from a company like Autodesk to Pluralsight. And then the second time was from Pluralsight to Shmoop. And, I'll lean back on the first one. When I was at Autodesk, I was running a very large team of people in more than a handful of countries. And so I was spending my time leading people in a diverse environment, anywhere from South Korea to London, to across the US, South America, up through Canada, and just all over the globe. There was a lot of, as you progress your role at a company like that, a lot of respect comes with the role from the people that work for you. And so I think you start to feel that you have some kind of value, right? And that's what you'd hope for in any role at a big company like that. And I was presented with this opportunity to start up a business at Pluralsight. And so when I left Autodesk, I sat at my desk. I actually took a picture at my desk the first day I started at Pluralsight, and I was an employee of one. So even though Pluralsight at that point was very small, it was a very small company, and it felt very risky. I went from this very comfortable position at Autodesk where they had, in excess of 15,000 employees, maybe up through 20,000 at the time, to being, leading a team of myself. I didn't have any employees when I started at Pluralsight. And then I was working in an environment with, very few people. Like there wasn't a lot of people there, the founders and some additional people. And that was, kind of it. It wasn't big. And it felt very nerve-wracking. I felt very uncomfortable. It didn't feel familiar. I was actually at Autodesk, I was working 100% remote. So I was not working in an office. And then I went to work in an office at Pluralsight. So all those challenges, kind of came into play. And then the other thing that you have to just kind of realize is, I felt valued and important at Autodesk. And when I went to Pluralsight, all that went away. There was no one telling me how great of a job I did anymore. all that mattered was that I got progress. So it was this very humbling experience in moving into this world of startups, and I realized some real strong lessons, and also the importance of being able to drive yourself and focus and execute on specific goals, being able to create your own goals and execute towards those goals. So when I was presented with the concept of moving to Shmoop, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. By the time I left Pluralsight, they were in the thousands of employees again. The company had gone public. I had a very large team all over the world again. So things had kind of gone not all the way back to the way they were. It didn't get into the 15,000 employee level, but they're probably on their way there. But the reality is, it definitely felt like I was changing again. And it was a very humbling experience. The shift again, I had not moved to Scottsdale, Arizona yet. So I was back in Salt Lake City, Utah. I sat at my desk. I was introduced to the new team. The team was smaller again. The concept of what they were doing, a lot of listening, right? A lot of listening to what was currently happening at the company. Ellen, the previous CEO, had a lot of things to communicate to me and hand off to me in those first few days. And the ability for me to pick up that information, it doesn't just happen over, you don't have endless time to spend, being coached and told what to do. Ellen sits on our board. And so me going from talking to Ellen over those first few days very quickly went away. And my ability to work with the team, flew down to Arizona, had some people fly in that were remote, did some introductions, learned from everybody, had one-on-ones with everybody at the company. The interesting thing was I made some directional suggestions on my second day at the company around where we should take the business and how we should progress the business. Those predictions just recently I look back on, and I would say about 95% of those kind of dramatic things that I said on day one were very applicable and accurate in what direction we're continuing to move as a business. And so, not to say that they're all 100% right, you're never 100% right, but you kind of prepare yourself into taking over a role, trying to imagine yourself in doing that role, realizing whether you have the passion or not to do that, and if it's in line with something that you would be good at doing. And if all those things kind of line up, take the shot. Go make the move. You live one time. It's worth it. It doesn't mean you're going to get it right every single time. There's someone that I've learned from. He was a previous co-CEO at Autodesk and is now the CEO of Bright Machines. Amar took a position as, I think it was probably his first CEO job at a company, and somewhere I read at some point he took the role in like 2008 during the economic downturn, and he failed at the job. He didn't succeed. And I think failure might be a stronger term. The metrics in the area, the way that he was working in during that economic downturn just caused failure. So it was one way or another. And so whether he failed or the economy failed, who cares? Point being, he took the chance. And in the end, it did propel his career forward in a really good way. And it also allowed him to have really strong impact on a variety of things that he does now. And I look up to somebody like that. I think that's amazing. You have to be able to take those chances, and by taking those chances, you will end up improving society, and you'll be able to really have an impact, as most of us want to have, on the world that we live in, to help it progress and move forward. So it's something that you just kind of have to, take and run with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And before we move on, can you repeat that gentleman's name again?
Yeah, Amar Hanspool. So he's the
Okay.
CEO of Bright Machines.
Got it. Just want to make sure I heard it correctly so I could mention him in the show notes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned him as an influence, and up perhaps next, I want to get into an exciting announcement that you mentioned to me before. But just before we go there, I'm curious, since you've brought it up, as you've worked throughout the growth of several companies and filled different roles in growing, scaling companies, but also determining their direction. I'm wondering what other influences you find yourself coming back to or realizing have had an impact on you, whether that's a book, a person, a resource, an experience. What are some of the things that have taught you and made an impact on your thinking?
Yeah, I think that happens every single day. It could be through a book you read. For me, it's people. I mentioned Amar. There's also, other individuals that have been super influential, whether they realize it or not. For me, it's people that I know, people that I can tangibly understand. And some of those individuals, Amar was the co-CEO with another individual named Andrew Agagnost, who's currently the CEO at Autodesk. And Andrew is, with numerous PhDs behind him, uses his extreme knowledge to make really, at the time, in some cases, felt like very risky decisions, but very well thought out decisions to progress the business forward, and continues to do that at Autodesk. And it's amazing to watch that. Before Andrew, it was Carl Bass. Carl Bass was the previous CEO of Autodesk, and before Carl, it was Carol Bartz. And Carol, drove the business forward, and really some of those experiences of how the business is run at Autodesk, I think all those individuals are absolutely amazing to me. As I've left Pluralsight, I think people have after I've left, I've realized a lot of the value. In hindsight, you start to realize some of the people that have influenced maybe some of the decisions that you make or things that you do. Aaron Sconard is the CEO of Pluralsight, and as I look back at the decisions that he made in running the business, absolutely amazing to think about some of those decisions that he made and how hard, in hindsight, those decisions were, but also how needed they were. And so a lot of respect, for that, but also those people help you make future decisions about your business. So as you think about all those historical things that have happened in the companies that you've most closely worked with, I think those are the ones that have the most impact on who you are as a person and how you make decisions. But then history just in general, right? I think as an individual, someone that really speaks to me is my own grandfather. His name's Clarence Marcus. He was an ex-scientist on the Manhattan Project. And, with someone like that, someone like my grandfather's character speaks to me as far as who I am as a person. My own father, all the people that you are probably most closely tied to are people that influence, kind of the root of who you are as a person, as a human being. But then the people you work with influence maybe how you think about making decisions. And then if you go one tier from there, just examples of individuals, people like Steve Jobs and other individuals are people who can maybe be guiding lights to how you should think about doing things versus how you would have thought about doing those things. And then your own employees. I'm inspired consistently by the people that work here at Shmoop and some of the things that they do as a whole, and kind of how they live their lives and how they think about helping our customers. All those things come into play when you're running a business like Shmoop, or any business that you're running. I think they all come into play, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and it's always cool to hear how different people learn and how you're aware of that. You're a sort of people-driven learner, so that's fascinating. And so I fell back to my old pronunciation earlier in the conversation, but I'm going to correct myself once again. You did mention that Shmoop is applying now for a patent for the first time for some new technology. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is super exciting, and we've actually met with our first few customers and shared some of our first insights. We call the new technology Shmoop Heartbeat. And so the concept of why we call it Heartbeat is because we're trying to gather a pulse of the student around social and emotional learning related to cognitive skills and other skills that the student would have. So when you think about it holistically, the way that we think about Shmoop Heartbeat is we want to be able to provide some understanding of, one, how the student learns, what their readiness is in learning. You think about someone waking up in the morning and their readiness to learn. Did they have breakfast that morning? Are they tired all the time? Are they really bad at taking timed tests? There's a variety of things that we're going to be looking for. So what we've done is we've partnered with a company by the name of Digital Promise. Digital Promise has done years of research. Zuckerberg Chan, Bill Melinda Gates funded organization. They've done years of research around what is needed, and how certain nodes of understanding connect to other nodes of learning or specific cognitive skill sets. And so when you start connecting all of that information, you start realizing, hey, if a person's really bad at calculus, maybe they're also really bad at this other thing. Or if they're really bad at taking timed tests, they're probably not going to pass any of their calculus tests, right? So there's this connection of how people learn, and then two, what their current understanding is. And when you mix this together, when we mix this understanding of a student or what their quote heartbeat is, one, the teacher wouldn't be able to ask every student in the classroom in a public school setting all of the needed questions to understand the current position or current heartbeat of that student. So we want to, as a company, as a tool, we want to be able to provide access into the student's mind for the teachers that are working with them. And that position of a student and that feeling, the emotional intelligence of the student changes consistently. This is an ever-changing thing. It's not I change every single year as I progress forward, every single week. I'm sure people's emotions have changed from February 1st through March 15th, right? So people were probably in a really good emotional place on February 1st. Our country is in really a challenging environment from a financial perspective. The stress levels are so high. And most teachers want to understand, are my students ready to learn? And if they're not, how can I help them progress? So one way of approaching this is, even here locally at some of the schools that my kids go to, they were asked some questions like, hey, if you're having some challenges, feel free to reach out to your teacher or to your school counselor and to get some one-on-one help and coaching. We don't want to do that just at a one-on-one. We don't want to just do that. Like, you can't scale that across the whole school. It becomes impossible to address every single student. We want to be able to do that at scale across all students by asking those students a few fun questions and getting their emotional response. We don't want to interrogate the student either. So this is where, our partnership with Digital Promise comes in. and asking ancillary questions that help us understand what the view of the student is, and how ready they are to learn, and what their previous knowledge base is to actually gain progress. Because if they don't have the foundational aspects of what they need to do, then they're not going to get that progress. And then we want to be able to prescribe a direction moving forward. And so from a highest level perspective, that's what we're creating at Shmoop, and that's the patents that we filed at this point. And we're super excited about it. This is technology that we're going to be providing in the 2021 school year. So it's not something that we're like years out. It's actually something we've been developing over the past year and preparing for this moment in time. The amazing thing about it is I think it's always been needed in the industry. The concept of teachers and administrators talking about understanding social emotional health of a student mixed with cognitive skill sets have been going on for years, but there's really hasn't been an approach to understand where the student sits. Like, how do you actually learn and understand that? But with Shmoop, you'll be able to now use a tool and apply it in the classroom, and be able to ask all the students questions and get a perspective or a heartbeat of all the students. That's going to be important for parents. That's going to be important for students, and that's going to be important for teachers. And so we're really starting to bring together the capabilities and understanding of where that student sits, either in or out of the classroom. And we've had teachers tell us a couple things. Teachers that teach in person, you know, they explain to us the need to understand the students' readiness. But for a teacher that teaches virtually, it's also been really amazing to hear what the teacher needs to see, is because they can't see that student come in and whether or not they have their backpack in the classroom or whether or not they're ready to learn, because they can't even see their face. They need some kind of perspective on where the student sits. Even a parent doesn't know everything that their student or their child is facing. And so it becomes really important to gain that perspective of the student. And at Shmoop, we are so excited to be releasing Shmoop Heartbeat in the 2021 school year, to be able to bring that capability to parents, teachers, administrators, and most of all to our students.
Yeah, that is exciting and definitely timely, as you mentioned, with this now being, you know, we're in late April 2020, and so the coronavirus is kind of unfortunately in full swing. And so and you're mentioning how it can basically, teachers can use it in the classroom or online. So I'm curious, are you able to talk at all about the mechanism of assessing the student's readiness to learn?
Yeah, I can talk about some of it without getting too much into the detail, because I'll start hitting some thresholds of where we don't want to share too much quite yet as we progress forward. But yeah, I mean, the concept is, you know, students come into the classroom and they get into the Shmoop interface. And as they get into the Shmoop interface, they'll be presented with a series of very simplistic questions that relate to things that they're learning, relates to how they're feeling, relates to their interests, right? What are they interested in? What do they like to do? And be able to provide a holistic picture, not, you know, spending too much time in assessing it. One of the things that some of the technology or the way we would think about this, you know, when we were at Pluralsight, when you took an assessment, for example, the concept of like an assessment there was, we don't want to ask you 200 questions. We want to slim it down to like 7. So we used interpolation, right? We're not using interpolation to do anything here, but the concept is we don't want to spend, you know, mass amounts of time assessing. We're not giving the students a test. We're trying to get their perspective on where they're at. And so we want them to spend just a few minutes, you know, in the morning or in the afternoon, or right before they go home from school, or at school as part of their homework, to give us some perspective on what their interests are, what they like to do, what they feel they're good at, give them some cognitive questions on certain topics or skill sets, and move right on and get right into the learning. And so we'll not only be able to provide, you know, that understanding of the student, engage that student's heartbeat, but then we're also going to be able to provide the study guides, the tools, the test readiness, the courses, and the teaching tools, in addition to that functionality that we'll be providing as we progress forward. So yeah, it's a little bit of the concept of that I can share up to this point as far as how it would actually interact with the student.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for explaining. And it makes sense as a new or a step forward for your company, because the library of content is so robust and thorough, and as you said, has the edge of humor and entertainment to it, that you can then assess what a particular student might need and might benefit from. And just as a quick note for folks who are listening, who are maybe just broadly interested in startups or more of the business side of EdTech, I still encourage you to go look up some of Shmoop's content, because as Andy alluded to, it is really great at explaining difficult concepts in a even serious concepts in a appropriate but still lighthearted and entertaining way. So that's something I've noticed from using some of your content in the classroom, Andy.
Awesome.
Yeah, but so we're nearing the end of our time here. So you have this new aspect of your business with the heartbeat that's coming out, which hopefully people will look out for. But just in general, what's a final message or call to action you'd like to leave for listeners?
Yeah, I think from a student perspective, it's all about progress. So, if you think about the most proactive students that have been proactive themselves and wanting to make sure that they have the best grades, those historically have been the students that use Shmoop. Those are our customers. And so, if you want to join that threshold of students that are looking to gain progress, so that they can get into the best colleges, universities, they can gain progress on just being more holistic as a learner and someone who knows more, that's definitely a direction you'd want to take, is to go to shmoop.com. Now, if you're a teacher and you're an administrator, or you're someone that's trying to ensure that the students have everything they need to take that next test, whether it's the ACT or any of the 35 AP exams, even now with the changes in the AP exams and in the future, as they go back to more standardized exams, and then they continue to evolve and change, we'll continue to stay up on that. Or if you need supplemental course content, and you need to keep your students engaged, there's one aspect of a lot of the standards. We follow a lot of those standards, but more of our kind of like fit, our product value, our course value to schools is engaging content. It is hard to keep students engaged. And I can give this example. My own son was presented with a video to teach him certain topics, and the video was 35 minutes long, and it was from 1982 was the copyright date on it, no exaggeration, and the video was quite boring. I watched the video with him, and I was a little bit disappointed. So we looked up a Shmoop comparable video on the same topic, teaching the same exact concepts, obviously aligned to curriculum in this case. And so the concepts were taught, again, in 3 to 5 minutes. They were taught in the same level of depth, but I actually watched, my son smile through that, and I watched him laugh a little bit. And it was really cool to see how the course content can engage the student. And it's interesting when you add a little bit of humor and a little bit of flair to the whole thing, it does last a little bit longer in your mind, because we all forget everything, and we always have to keep learning. Learning can be very boring without a little bit of fun. The most in-depth novels can be simplified at a level to understand what's happening in those novels, but at the same time, the most in-depth educational principles about why that book was written or what's happening are also communicated on shmoop.com. So the concept of not simplifying education, but making it more available and understanding to anyone that's gonna invest some time in the platform is really what's gonna happen. So if you're a teacher, there's the courses, the study tools, the study guides, the test readiness, and there's also these amazing teaching tools, tips on dealing with bullying, tips with dealing with challenges inside the classroom or remote learning. And so we're excited to be able to provide all those tools. And then obviously soon to come, Shmoop Heartbeat. And then, for teachers, they go to the same place. They go to shmoop.com. They'll want to go directly to a schools and districts link, which is up at the top of the page. so that they can get more information about providing about information that relates on how to implement, use it. You can also reach out to us at sales@shmoop.com or support@shmoop.com, and we will get back to you with information, pricing, help. During the coronavirus season, if you will, we have been providing free access to schools globally. So our thought is we really wanted to help. We have now provided free learning to over 3 million students across the country that were not previously our customers. It's taken a tremendous amount of effort from the Shmoop team to get things implemented and ready and moving. Implementations have happened in a matter of hours for schools, and it's been really cool to see that we really want to help during the time, and we've been able to, and it's been an honor. But we'll all go back to school, and we're all going to continue to keep developing products, and the value of it goes way past coronavirus. It's just been helpful during a short period of time, during a season of challenge. So if anybody wants to learn more, if you're a student, you go to shmoop.com and go to study guides or the career readiness or life skills sections. If you're a teacher, you'd go to shmoop.com. There's actually a shmoop.com/teach page. So for teachers, if you're an administrator, you can go to the administrative site, or you can just reach out to us directly at those email addresses I previously provided, sales@shmoop.com, and we can get back to you with more information and provide demos if needed.
Yeah, I encourage anyone, regardless of your particular role in education, to check it out. I echo your sentiments, Andy. Well, Andy, I've appreciated how you've kind of reflected on your past experiences and articulated the stories and advice and examples of how it all feeds into your work today at Shmoop. So until next time, everybody, my name is Gerard Dawson. You've been listening to the EdTech Startup Show. And Andy, thanks so much again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So what'd you think, everybody? I thought my conversation with Andy was insightful and educational, from all thanks to him and what he talked about. If you are enjoying the EdTech Startup Show and you want to hear a little bit more about the intersection of business, technology, and education, remember to head over and sign up for the Business of Learning letter. And you can do that right now. Pull out your phone's browser, go to gerarddawson.com, drop your email in the form there to get the free welcome series. And until next time, thanks for listening.